We strongly prefer a world where critical resources are governed by International Materials Agency. By critical resources, we mean things that society cannot function without, like oil, natural gas, rare earths, and other materials that power transport, technology, and industry. And by govern, we mean manage through international rules that reduce shortages, limit trade conflicts, and push countries to use these resources more efficiently. We are talking about a system that stops essential resources from being treated like toys in a geopolitical game. The reality is simple. When something is this important, leaving it to pure national competition is a disaster waiting to happen. And that makes my first argument. Global controls protect people from chaos. Critical resources are not ordinary products. If their supply is disrupted, the effects can spread internationally. Oil is the clearest example. When war or political tension threatens oil supply, gas prices move fast and ordinary people have to pay for it. And the Iraq War is a good example of this. Even though the fighting happens far away from most countries, oil prices has gone up, and that has affected families, workers, and businesses across the world. And thank God, Indonesia is considered one of the most safest countries from oil prices compared to other Southeast Asian countries. One conflict in one region can shake something as basic as gas prices for millions of people who had nothing to do with the war. So if we already know that oil markets react badly to this instability, why would we leave control of critical resources to the same messy system that keeps making the shocks? And the impacts are higher than gas prices. And the impacts are higher gas prices, meaning more expensive transport, food, shipping, and electricity in some places. And everyone should care about this motion because it is the price of a daily life. An international materials agency would not magically erase the conflict, but it can reduce panic, coordinate reserves, and stop every country from scrambling for itself the moment trouble starts. Moving on to my second point, this kind of governance prevents powerful countries from turning resources into weapons. When a few states or companies control critical resources, they can use that power to pressure others, like raising prices, block exports, or threaten supply when political becomes intense. And that makes the rest of the world dependent and vulnerable. We have seen this pattern before in energy markets. If a region becomes unstable, everyone else starts worrying about supply cuts, and that fear alone can change prices and decision-making across the globe. The Iraq War showed that even the possibility of disruption is enough to create global pressure. That is exactly why leaving all these beautiful resources from Earth in the hands of competing national interests is very dangerous. A global agency would make that much harder. It could create rules for emergency access, keep strategic reserves, and reduce the ability of anyone to hold the world through hostage and scarcity. Countries should not have that fear that access to energy or key materials will depend on whichever government is angriest that month. This comes to my third argument. International governance pushes responsibility instead of reckless instruction. The truth is, markets often reward speed and not care. If a country or company could profit by extracting more, it will usually do that unless someone sets a limit. And this leads to pollution, waste, and damage to local communities. It also means resources get burned through without any long-term plan. A better system already exists in small form. Countries and companies sometimes use reserves, recycling, and shared agreements to reduce waste to stretch supply. And that proves the basic idea works. If coordination can help at a smaller scale, then international coordination can do the same on a bigger scale. An agency could push recycling, better extraction standards, and more efficient use so we are not constantly racing towards shortage. The impact is long-term stability. It's more than just protecting this year's supply. We are protecting the next generation from inheriting the world where the most important materials were wasted because everyone was too busy competing. This is why our side wins. The opposition of this motion might say, nations should control their own resources because power matters. But power does not mean the right to make everyone else suffer. When a resource is a global in its effects, its management should be the global in its logic. The Iraq War is the kind of example that proves our point. A conflict war over power and oil did not stay local. It affected fuel prices, markets, and a daily life far beyond the battlefield. That is what happens when critical resources are tied to unstable politics. So, if we know that national control can create global pain, then the smarter choice is coordination. This motion is not about dreaming of a perfect world. It is about choosing with the less dangerous one, a world where critical resources are governed by the International Materials Agency is more stable, less reckless, and more fair than the one where every country fights for itself. That is why we support this mission. Thank you very much.